Okay, so today the federal government has released the new proposal for their budget in 2026. And in that, there is a lot of talk about the immigration targets they have in 2026. So I thought I was just going through it. I was making some TikToks as I was going through it, and I thought I could just make a whole video on sort of the what I think on the initial response or my initial take about what the federal government is hinting at for immigration targets in 2026. Now, there's some kind of good news and bad news if you're a temporary resident or if you're someone that's in the process of immigrating to Canada. There are several things here to be excited about and some things to be wary about. So, first of all, the 2026-2028 immigration levels plan is clearly listed in the proposed budget. It starts off by basically explaining that our system has a goal, to create a country that is economically viable and to attract people from around the world. Um, but it also admits that the system is a little bit out of whack. There has been over the last 5 years, since the last 3 years especially, we've had an increase of temporary residents, and now the number of temporary residents in Canada is 7.5% of the population, which is just too high. It's about double what it should be, or at least what the historical averages were. So the government wants to fix that by basically what they say is taking back control of the immigration system. It's kind of like language there that I believe is a little bit um, overstated a little bit. I mean, taking back control is kind of like the Liberals were the one that created this issue, so they're the ones that are fixing it as well. Um, but admitting that it's out of control, I guess, is a little bit overstated. I'm not sure I agree with that statement. But moving into, really the crux of the plan. So we'll see that there's some numbers they're proposing. So they're basically decreasing um, the amount of permanent residents to be more in line with about 380,000. This is about where it was before the pandemic year started, and definitely where it was um, during the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, there was this like push to get population increase, and then they had a plan to go to 500,000. That is clearly now not the plan anymore. So that this number, although it's lower than it was in 2024, it's actually a normal number. So don't be considering this as lower than it should be. I want to skip down to a couple of things that I noticed here. So the one here, okay, it says budget 2025 also proposes to undertake a one-time measure. A one-time measure. When I see that word or that phrase, it reminds me of, if anyone remembers back to the pandemic, there was a class of people who got invited for permanent residence called TR to PR. TR to PR were people who were in Canada as temporary residents, and they basically, if you had a job, you had a work permit, you got selected to become a permanent resident, and it was simple as that. So a one-time measure for me reminds me of this time, because that was a one-time program as well. And they want to convert basically 33,000 work permit holders into permanent residents by 2026 and 2027. So I was like, why 33,000? That's such a weird number. Like, why wouldn't be 50,000 or 100,000? And then I thought, okay, well, let's take a look at the current breakdown in express entry and see where that looks. And also keeping in mind that they want to normalize things back to where they were in 20 pre-pandemic. So if you remember back to pre-pandemic, the cutoff scores for express entry were about 450 to 475. So if you were in the express entry pool and you had a score of around 450 to 475, you could get an invite to permanent residency in Canada. And then that all changed after the pandemic. Now we see, these days the scores are well above 500, and very few people actually have access to these scores. It's you have to have French, you have to have a master's degree, you have to have be young, and all these things. So if we actually look at why this number might be 33,000, I want you to take a look here. If I go over to the amount of people who are in the express entry system with a score over 500, is 25,000 or roughly 26,000 right now. So 26,000 people, if we could get those people out of express entry, now we are in a system where the max score would be around 500. And then if you think about the amount of people in express entry with a score from 451 to 500, the breakdown, it might be skewed a little bit in the sense that we have more people in the 450 to 475 range than we would in the 475 to 500 range. So it's not unthinkable to say that they got that number of 33,000 by working out basically how many people in express entry they had to get rid of in order to get the system back to normal. Now, there is a little bit of a, a grain of salt element you have to take into consideration, is that the pool is not like a static thing. The express entry pool, it's always changing. There's always people coming into the pool and always people, exiting the pool. But if we're going to say that the total temporary residents of Canada are now going to be capped and decreased, so there's going to be fewer students coming in, there's going to be fewer foreign workers coming in, then technically we should be able to predict then the amount of people going into the express entry pool. And my feeling is that this number is not random. This is a number that they feel that is a surplus. Like if they said, okay, we're going to invite this many people into express entry or out of express entry into PR for these amount of years, we still have a surplus of around 33,000 people that we're not accounting for. And they are valuable. They are worthy of becoming permanent residents. So this one-time measure to accelerate the transition of 33,000 work permit holders to permanent residency is very intriguing. Now, it could also mean several other things. It could mean that they're looking at particular sectors in particular. I think of construction. There was talk earlier this year of actually having a fast-track PR pathway for construction workers, even undocumented construction workers, believe it or not, because it's all part of the Build Canada Strong budget and proposal, is to have skilled workers in Canada. So it's obviously more to come on that number, but why that number? I don't know. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to take a look at and talk about briefly, there was another very exciting thing I came across. Okay, so here we have a breakdown of our workers and students for temporary residents. So they say this is how we're going to arrive at the 385 number. We're going to have more workers than we have students. That's one thing to keep in note. So this could mean probably more construction type LMIAs, right? If we're talking about foreign workers, they all come in mostly on LMIAs, or they come in under the International Experience Canada program, the IEC programs. Those programs there account for maybe 40,000 people per year, the IEC working holiday programs. And then there's going to be spouses of skilled workers as well that'll come in, and they will account for those work permits as well. So that is actually in line with what we're doing right now. These numbers are kind of reflective of where we've been for the last 6 months. So this is not going to change the feel of what our current immigration system is at right now. So that is pretty self-explanatory. The economic immigration you can see is around 240,000. So of that 380, 240 will be in economic, and that means express entry and PMPs. Now, what they haven't listed here is how many spots they're going to allocate to the provinces for their PMPs. That is sort of like something I guess would be discussed or released if this budget is approved, because that will actually tell the story of how many people will have a chance to immigrate to Canada through the PMP systems once we know the numbers involved with the federal target there. If they say that we're going to allocate maybe 80,000 to express entry, that will leave a large number for people, for the provinces to determine the rest. And I would want to see, and I hope that we see this, that the federal government actually releases a higher quota to each of the provinces, because the provinces have for years been asking for more control over their immigration systems. One way to do it would just be to give them full access to all the PMPs they want. And that way we'll see in provinces like BC, Alberta, Ontario, where this year the PMPs have been closed, we'll get probably, more of a realistic, pathway for people that want to immigrate to these provinces. It allows the provinces to keep the skilled workers they want to keep, and it allows them to be in control of what's going on. Now, this is all under the guise and, auspices of, if you're going to give more control over to the provinces, they're going to want to define their pathways more clearly. Like in BC, for example, we're going to target teachers, young, early childhood educators, we're going to target healthcare workers, and we're going to target trades. And so when we're talking about things in that sense, maybe if you're not in one of those skilled works, then okay, maybe you're not going to be someone that's targeted right away. In other words, the system may not go back to what it was before the sort of big adjustment came into play, or 2024 and 2025, early 2025. We might not see that level of PMP ever again. But I'll be curious to know what the breakdown is for the provinces when they release that. And family reunification, so that's always going to be constant. That's spousal sponsorship, common law sponsorship. And I'll tell you this because this is written right into our laws at the highest level, that you're not going to deny a Canadian citizen marrying somebody and then, bringing them back and making them permanent resident. That's going to be a thing always. So that I don't see changing at all. The refugee number is interesting. There has been talk about decreasing that, but I think, Canada does obligate itself on the world stage, at least, to take in refugees around the world. And I think that these are baked in and cooked into some of the international deals that we do with other countries, like in Europe, for example. When we do trade deals with countries, it also involves, when we do defense partnerships, it also involves having a commitment to, displace people and to have a quota number in mind. So that's also something to keep your eyes on, is how many protected persons and agency cases we're going to take. Now, this is already flooded. Like the system already has way more agency applications and refugee applications than it should right now. So I'm not entirely sure this number is reflective of how many new cases they're going to bring on, or how many cases they're going to try to approve or make a decision on per year, right? And then another trend that you can see that's always here to stay is the French speaking. It's actually increasing. So if you're somebody in Canada on a work permit and you're looking for PR options, it's always a good idea to go for French. It's never not a good idea. And that's going to be a thing for the next 3 years. Definitely the next 3 years, if not more. And then another note I found interesting was this foreign credential recognition. It seems like the government of Canada is recognizing that a lot of our new to be immigrants in the healthcare field especially are having trouble validating their credentials. So doctors basically cannot get their credentials validated from the provinces, or nurses, and they've actually mentioned doctors, nurses, and other healthcare related professionals right here in the note. So they're creating a big fund. They're going to throw $97 million into a fund and say, we want the provinces and in territories to improve the fairness and transparency and timelines and consistency of the foreign credential recognition system, with focus on health and construction sectors. So what that means is construction is like the Red Seal, things. That goes directly to the Industry Training Authority. Those are the people who decide if you have a Red Seal or not. And ironically, these people in these sectors, the accreditation societies, they're provincially run. So that means that a doctor in Ottawa, in Ontario, has a different license than a doctor in BC. And I've never really understood why Canada does that, but the provinces seem to hang on to this, sense of like, we need to define what a teacher means and what a doctor means in BC, and that's going to be different than it will be in Alberta, and so on and so on. I think the federal government for a long time has wanted it to all just be clean and just one recognition for everything. And they get blamed. The federal government gets blamed for a lot of this unfairness, but it's actually the provinces that can't really get on the same page and understand that, it's in their best interest, because they'll protect their workers. They'll protect their doctors. They'll protect their, tradespeople by saying, we're not going to have foreign people come in here and take your jobs. But if you say we have one credential that will satisfy all provinces, now you can have intermobility between provinces, which would then threaten the jobs of those people. And I get that point, but it really does throw a stick in the spokes, and there's a lot of bureaucratic mess and tape and money spent at this. And so I hope that $97 million goes to actually authentic, programming that would accelerate these credentials, instead of just the provinces just seeing it as a cash grab and just doing whatever they want with the money. which is probably what's going to happen. And then we have also this focus on recruitment of international talent. This is kind of tied with Prime Minister Carney's vision of these strategic programs, because he sees basically, if we're going to create all these massive government programs and these projects, basically, we need to have skilled people in Canada who are overseeing these types of projects and actually developing the scientific and kind of technologically innovations that come with it. So they're actually recruiting. This is a interesting thing. It's 1.7 billion dollars of funding, basically going to go to schools, universities, to hire what they're calling research. Where are they? International talent acquisition strategy, assistant to make. Where is it? Where is it? One-time initiative to recruit a thousand highly qualified international researchers. So these people, aka, are like PhDs and people that are professors, like work in schools and stuff like that. So they're basically trying to recruit from other countries and other schools highly qualified professors to come into our schools and research and to conduct, these very innovative, special projects that are going to be focused in one of these four different sectors. So you can see the majority of the funding, the 1 billion over 13 years, is going into natural sciences and engineering. So that is, in other words, like resource extraction. So Canada's talking about them being a major player for critical minerals and the things that the world needs. Well, how are we going to extract all this stuff if we don't have the technology and know how to do it? You need to bring in people from other countries to do that, and that's exactly what this funding is supposed to do. So it's very interesting to see that, and also it'd be interesting to see where these people are coming from. I would like to see that a lot of these people come from a country like China, because China has excellent universities and they also have the knowledge and skills and the innovative technology to extract critical minerals from the ground. So it would be cool to see us partner more with Chinese universities to bring in professors to share knowledge. That's a sneaky and also an open way, I guess, to promote that type of shared knowledge. And so this is also something that people ask me a lot, is like, well, how do professors just come into Canada? Well, in our Immigration Act, we actually have a section that's dedicated just for this type of work permit holder. So as a professor, if you're offered a job in a Canadian university, you can just direct apply for a work permit. You don't need to have what's called an LMIA, which is a labor market impact assessment. This is the document, or at least the process an employer usually has to go through to hire a foreign worker. If you're a university, you can just basically offer the professor the job and they can come in and they can work. And so the good thing is that normally this money would be coming from international fees. These schools, like, these big schools, they make a lot of money from international fees. Well, where's the international fees going to come from if the student population now is decreased? And the government's recognizing that, and they're saying, well, let's just give them money. But instead of just giving them money for whatever they want, they have to use it for the retention and recruitment of these specialized researchers, these international researchers. And of course, as an international researcher, you would have then a pathway to permanent residency, because the work experience that you accumulate in Canada is yours to keep. That opens the door for express entry. So I really like this initiative as well, because it kind of ties into the overall plan of making Canada like more technologically advanced. It also helps with the solving the problem, how are we going to find ways to extract our natural resources in an environmental way, in a way that is technologically competitive. And it also helps us develop our universities, which are really the kind of the breeding ground for our next innovative, workers and leaders in Canada. So it says additional details on the launch of recruitment process will be announced in the coming weeks. So that's very interesting. That's like immediate in the world of immigration to have it announced in the coming weeks. And as we go on, we can see that there is one other thing. So remember when Carney announced a month ago when the U.S. said that they were going to start to charge $100,000 for each H-1B visa in the U.S. And then Carney says, well, we're going to target those people and bring them to Canada. So he's actually mentioned that in the budget as well. So they want to address labor shortages and attract top talent in healthcare, in research, in advanced industries, and other key sectors in the coming months. So in the coming months, the government will launch an accelerated pathway for H-1B visa holders, basically directly competing with those people who are in the United States already to say, if you don't like your job in the US, or if you're about to be fired because your employer is not going to renew your $100,000 visa, then we have an option for you. Typically this would probably involve having a job offer. I can't imagine the government of Canada would be giving free work permits to people without job offers. That's going to flood the labor market with workers. But I would suspect that if you're an employer or a school and you're in the healthcare, research, or advanced industries or other key sectors, keep your ears out and notice what's going to happen in the coming weeks as we see this H-1B visa holder program come to life. So that's pretty much it for now. And I'm assuming if this budget gets passed, then we would find more details and sort of the trickle downs of what's going to actually happen, how that's going to work. So one of the question marks I had, like I said earlier, was the PMP. So once the provinces know their quota number, they can start drawing again for their new quotas for 2026. So that's going to start to spark and spur our immigration system, get it going again. And when will this, I guess, one-time, where is it? The one-time 33,000 temporary residents fall into place. So here it is. So 33,000 work permit holders, 2 PR. It just says sometime basically in 2026 and 2027. So that is something to keep in mind as well. So those are my initial thoughts on the breakdown for the new immigration targets that were listed on the Canada's budget that was released today for 2026. It is not approved yet. It hasn't been actually approved. It's just something that's been proposed by the Carney government. But overall, it's encouraging. And I think it's the right move. And I think that, it's going to benefit everyone in the long run. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this new budget. And hope to hear from you in the comments. Thank you.